There is this incredibly specific, almost universal moment of modern human existence. I was actually thinking about it the other night because I found myself right in the middle of it.
Oh no. Let me guess.
Yeah, it usually happens around like 2:0 a.m.
Right. The classic danger zone.
Exactly. The house is completely quiet, the rest of the world is asleep. But you are awake, bathed in that blue, slightly haunting light of your phone screen, and you are staring down an online shopping cart.
Uh-huh. We've all been there.
And inside that cart is something you absolutely, unequivocally do not need. Let's say it's, I don't know, a $400 titanium burr manual hand crank coffee grinder.
That is very specific.
Well, But the thing is, you don't even drink that much coffee. Yet in that precise moment, the physical sensation in your body is electric.
It really is. It's a physiological response.
Right. Your brain is performing Olympic-level mental gymnastics to convince you that this chunk of machined metal is the missing puzzle piece to your entire life.
You start visualizing this whole fantasy version of yourself.
Yes. You're waking up at 5:30 a.m., the morning light is streaming through the window, you're like reading Stoic philosophy, and you're methodically grinding artisanal beans.
But it's never just about the object itself, is it? You aren't really buying a coffee grinder.
What are you buying then?
You are trying to purchase that fantasy morning. I mean, it's an identity signaling mechanism, but played out entirely in your own head.
Oh, wow. So it's not even for other people at that point.
No, exactly.
No.
You're experiencing the illusion that this one specific financial transaction is going to magically bridge the massive, uncomfortable gap between the flawed person you are right now and the idealized, highly productive person you desperately want to be.
That is so accurate, it hurts.
And the dopaminergic reward loop in your brain is firing so intensely just from the anticipation of the purchase that the actual object becomes almost irrelevant.
That is exactly it. The dopamine hits before you even buy it.
Right. The anticipation is the drug.
And so you hover your thumb over that biometric sensor or that frictionless buy now button, and it feels like this tiny, high-stakes negotiation with your own future.
It really does.
So I started really pulling on this thread, looking at a bunch of different sources. We've got behavioral economics, some incredibly sharp distribution and marketing analyses, and even contrasting that with ancient financial texts.
A really fascinating mix.
Yeah, and some modern Korean philosophies on the underlying life of physical objects. Because what becomes terrifyingly clear is that when you are hovering your thumb over that button at 2:00 a.m., you aren't just making an accidental, isolated mistake.
No.
You are standing on an invisible battlefield. And that's kind of our mission today, to just synthesize all these ideas and figure out why our brains betray our wallets.
I love that framing. Because you're a combatant in a war you probably don't even realize is happening.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating to me is that across completely different eras, cultures, and technological landscapes, the human mind remains the exact same vulnerable territory.
It hasn't changed at all.
Right. Whether you are walking through a bazaar in ancient Mesopotamia or infinitely scrolling through a targeted social media feed, the psychological friction is identical.
It actually brings me to this one analysis I was reading. It was from a writer who spent 25 years working in distribution and marketing.
Oh, from the knack Billajarla notes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Basically, someone who was on the absolute front lines of engineering desire. And the way they describe this dynamic is just chilling.
How do they frame it?
They frame it as a perpetual asymmetric war between the market and the consumer. The market is the spear, and the consumer must act as the shield.
But it's not a fair fight.
Not even close to fair.
If we stick with that metaphor, the market as the spear isn't just taking random blind jabs in the dark hoping to hit you.
Right, they aren't guessing.
Exactly. The people wielding that spear are backed by billions of dollars of predictive analytics, behavioral psychology, and massive A/B testing. They know exactly how sharp that spear needs to be.
And they know the precise angle of your specific vulnerabilities.
Yes. The author breaks this war down into 3 distinct operational stages, which really exposes the mechanics of how we get manipulated.
Let's get into those stages, because most of us only notice the war when we are already losing it, when we're in the checkout cart.
Precisely. But the first stage happens way before that. It's the pre-shopping search phase.
So before you even know you want something.
Right. This occurs long before you consciously realize you want or need a product. This is the realm of predictive algorithms and ambient lifestyle branding.
They aren't aggressively shouting, "Buy this coffee grinder."
No, it's way more subtle. They're subtly populating your digital environment with images of tranquil, perfectly curated kitchens.
Oh, that makes sense.
And they are tracking your digital exhaustion. If the algorithm detects you are working late, scrolling through work emails at midnight, it knows your cognitive defenses are down.
So it strikes when you're weak.
Exactly. It starts feeding you content that suggests comfort, control, and aesthetic peace. They are basically excavating a void in your identity and planting the seed of desire inside it.
So by the time you reach the second stage, which the author identifies as the debate during the actual shopping process, you feel like you arrived there organically.
But you didn't. The battlefield was prepared for you.
Wow. And this second stage is that 2.00 a.m. moment. It's the active combat zone where your rational, budgeting mind is desperately trying to wrestle with the emotional craving that was manufactured weeks ago.
And then there is the third stage, which is the usage after buying.
The aftermath.
Right. This is where the illusion shatters. How effectively do you actually use the item? Does it fulfill that grand promise of transforming your mornings?
Or does it end up shoved in the back of a cabinet after 2 weeks?
Exactly. Serving as a physical monument to the fact that the market spear completely bypassed your logical needs and struck your emotional insecurities.
I really want to focus on that second stage, that internal debate, because that is where the friction is just unbearable.
It is the critical moment.
There is an incredible quote from the character Kiwoo in the movie Parasite that gets brought up in these notes. The quote is, "Our feelings cannot lie. The real war is the inner war."
That's a powerful way to frame it.
Right. And the profound point being made here is that marketers don't actually win by overpowering your logic with superior facts or better pricing. They win by infiltrating your inner emotional state.
Because your feelings are the most authentic, undeniable part of your immediate subjective experience.
They feel real to you in that moment.
Absolutely. If you are sitting there at 2 a.m. and you feel inadequate or you feel profoundly exhausted and believe you deserve a reward for surviving a brutal work week, no amount of rational budgeting logic is going to easily override that physical sensation.
So the marketers know that the inner war is the only theater that actually matters.
Yes. If they can corrupt your feelings, your logic is essentially held hostage.
Wait, held hostage?
Yeah, I mean, your logic will actually switch sides and start working for your emotions, rationalizing the purchase. You'll start calculating how much you'll save on cafe coffee to justify the expensive grinder.
Oh man, I do that all the time. It reminds me of the way we used to talk about advertising, like a medieval siege.
How so?
Well, the idea was that marketers would just batter down the walls of your castle with repetitive jingles and billboards, just brute force.
Oh, right. The old school way.
But that is totally outdated. Modern algorithmic marketing is more like a digital casino.
A casino. That's an interesting analogy.
Think about the user interface of your phone. There are no clocks. The scrolling is infinite, completely removing the natural stopping cues your brain actually relies on.
And the payment systems.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Apple Pay, Google Wallet, they're entirely frictionless. They have systematically removed the physiological pain that humans historically felt when physically handing over paper cash.
Which was a real biological deterrent.
Right. The abstraction of money into pixels makes the surrender completely effortless.
That casino analogy is spot on. They remove the friction so that the corrupted emotional state has a clear, unobstructed path to execution.
But wait, I have to pause here, because I was thinking about this whole "we are victims of the market" narrative, and I honestly think it gives us too much of a pass.
Okay, I'm listening.
Is it really just this external algorithmic spear tricking us? Or are we actively and willingly walking into the casino, sitting down at the table, and handing over our wallets because of our own massive egos?
Oh, that's a sharp pivot.
I mean, are we just trying to signal our status to people who don't even care?
That is the uncomfortable truth at the core of all behavioral economics, especially when you look at the psychology of money concepts.
Right.
It is a symbiotic relationship. The spear only works because we have stripped off our own armor. We really have to look at the social psychology of money.
So we are complicit.
Absolutely. A massive portion of our spending, particularly in developed, hyper-connected economies, is entirely socially driven. We are highly social primates.
We look at the troop.
Exactly. We constantly observe the troop around us, our neighbors, our colleagues, the curated lives of influencers, and we absorb these incredibly subtle cues about what success, safety, and status look like.
So we aren't buying for utility.
No, we buy things to mimic the alpha figures we admire or to signal to our peers that we are ascending the hierarchy.
It's the classic keeping up with the Joneses, but like weaponized on a global digital scale.
Weaponized is the right word.
Because you aren't just comparing yourself to your neighbor's new lawnmower anymore. You're comparing your behind-the-scenes reality to the heavily edited highlight reels of billionaires and celebrities.
Exactly. But the invisible trap here, and this is a monumental concept in the psychology of money, is that we are almost always taking financial cues from people who are playing a completely different financial game than we are.
Yes. This idea of playing different games completely reframes how I look at the world now.
It's eye-opening.
When you see someone's stuff, you are seeing their moves on a board, but you don't know what game they're actually playing.
Think about it functionally. Let's say you are a 35-year-old mid-level manager trying to build a reasonable safety net, save for a comfortable retirement, and maybe put a kid through a decent school.
Okay, so that is my game.
Right, that's your game. Now your neighbor, who is roughly the same age, pulls into their driveway with a brand new, custom-ordered $100,000 sports car.
Your immediate visceral emotional response is almost always a toxic cocktail of envy and inadequacy.
It's natural.
You think, we live in the same neighborhood, we probably make a similar salary. Why don't I have that? What am I doing wrong? Should I finance one too?
But what you do not see, what is entirely invisible to you, is the game they are playing.
Right. What's their context?
Maybe they are a high-risk day trader who absolutely needs to project an aura of extreme liquid wealth to attract and retain nervous clients.
Oh, so the car's a prop for work.
Exactly. Or maybe they are drowning in $500,000 of high-interest consumer debt, and they are playing a tragic game of securing short-term dopamine hits to cope with a hollow marriage or a job they despise.
That's dark, but probably common.
Or maybe they inherited an 8-figure trust fund, and the car represents a fraction of a percent of their net worth.
And if you don't know their game, but you try to match their moves to soothe your own ego, you are going to systematically destroy your own strategy.
You'll wipe yourself out.
It is literally like sitting down at a chessboard and trying to play chess using the rules of checkers. Just because the person across the room looks like they're having a really great time playing checkers.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
You are going to lose your own game because you adopted the wrong mechanics.
Precisely. When we impulse buy to keep up with someone else, we are making massive capital allocation decisions based on aggressively incomplete information.
We see the spear, we feel the envy, but we don't see the underlying context.
And this brings us to what I consider the fundamental psychological illusion that distorts our entire modern reality.
What's that?
The illusion of visible wealth.
Oh, I am so glad we are hitting on this. In terms of behavioral economics, this concept completely shattered how I view society.
It's a paradigm shift.
From childhood, we are conditioned by media and culture to believe that wealth is what we can physically see.
Right. Large houses, designer clothes, first-class plane tickets.
But the psychological and mathematical reality is the exact opposite. Wealth is what you do not see.
It is the unspent assets. It's the restraint.
Exactly.
When you watch that neighbor drive past in their $100,000 car, the only objective mathematical truth you know about their financial situation is that they now have $100,000 less than they did the day before.
Or, far more likely in today's credit-driven economy, they have $100,000 more in debt.
Right. You are observing their spending, not their wealth.
But the cognitive dissonance there is wild. It's basic addition and subtraction, right?
You would think so.
We know that spending money results in having less money. A child understands that. Yet, our brains completely override the math.
Why do you think that is?
Well, we code that person as wealthy because our evolutionary biology is wired to respond to visible displays of resources, like a peacock's feathers.
But in the modern financial ecosystem, the act of spending money to look wealthy is the literal mechanical process of destroying your actual wealth.
It's a profound paradox. And if we are losing this inner 2.0 AM war because we are desperately trying to project an illusion of wealth to others, we have to fundamentally redefine what wealth actually looks like.
We have to change the internal scorecard entirely.
How do we do that?
To protect that invisible wealth, the savings, the investments, the lack of debt, we have to be ruthless about how we categorize the money leaving our hands.
Right.
This is where synthesizing the modern distribution analysis with ancient financial wisdom becomes incredibly practical. Across these texts, spending essentially boils down to 3 rigid categories.
Let's unpack those 3 categories because this is where the shield is actually forged.
Okay, the first category is the baseline, necessities.
Right. This is the non-negotiable exchange of capital for baseline survival. Food, clean water, basic shelter, keeping the heat on in the winter.
You obviously can't eliminate this, but you are required to manage it efficiently.
Then you move to the second category, which operates on completely different physics. Investments.
And this is fundamentally different from purchasing a consumer good.
Right. An investment is the deliberate allocation of capital with the explicit mathematical purpose of generating future capital. You are planting a seed.
You are willingly parting with resources today so that they will compound and multiply tomorrow.
And then we drop into the third category.
A dangerous one.
Yeah, the dark forest where that 2.00 a.m. shopping cart lives. Desires or impulsive spending, this is money set on fire.
It's driven by the need to show off, by transient emotional voids, by targeted algorithms, or simply by an artificially manufactured inability to distinguish a genuine biological or professional need from a fleeting want.
This is the danger zone that drains the invisible wealth.
And the ability to ruthlessly distinguish between these three categories is the ultimate shield against the market's spear.
It's so crucial.
The prevailing wisdom across these sources emphasizes a reality that most people ignore. Guarding your expenditures is mathematically more important than guarding your income.
Wait, really? More important than making more money?
Yes. Earning a massive salary is only step one. How you categorize and deploy that salary dictates whether it accumulates into freedom or just evaporates into storage units full of stuff.
Which connects so seamlessly to the ancient wisdom for the Babylonian parables. I was reading through those, and it's almost funny.
Funny how?
How a civilization operating thousands of years ago, trading in shekels and grain, had the exact same behavioral and psychological deficits that we do on Amazon.
Human nature is remarkably consistent.
Right. The foundational law they talk about is start thy purse to fattening. And the sole mechanism for achieving that is control thy expenditures.
It's ancient budgeting.
Exactly. The rule of thumb they operated on was a strict budget. Pay for your necessities and a very modest amount of enjoyments without spending more than 9/10 of your earnings.
So you pay yourself that 1/10 first, locking it into the investment category.
It sounds incredibly simple when you say it out loud. Save 10%. Live on 90.
But the psychological hurdle to actually execute that over a lifetime is massive.
Because to do that, you have to constrain the third category. You have to put a leash on your desires.
You have to willingly look at something you want in the present moment, feel the emotional craving for it, and actively choose to deny yourself.
Okay, wait, hold on. I have to interrupt and push back on this entirely.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
Because this is where financial theory always seems to hit a brick wall when it meets actual human reality.
Fair point.
If you take this rigid ancient Babylonian rule of living on 90% and denying your desires, and you preach that to a modern worker, say a nurse who just got off a brutal 14-hour shift.
Right.
Her feet are bleeding, she had to deal with unimaginable stress, and you tell her, no, you cannot buy that $6 premium latte, and you shouldn't buy that nice jacket you've been eyeing because it falls into the desires category.
She is going to be furious.
She is going to laugh in your face. Or worse, she's going to tell you to go to hell.
And she'd be justified.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It feels like this advice is just demanding that people be miserable, austere monks. It requires humans to be perfectly endlessly rational, while totally ignoring the fact that modern life is deeply exhausting.
And sometimes you just need a $6 hit of serotonin to make it to tomorrow.
Yes.
That is an incredibly valid pushback, and honestly, it highlights the exact trap of traditional spreadsheet-based financial advice.
So the spreadsheets are wrong.
Well, it's why 90% of extreme budgets fail within the first 3 months. Humans are not spreadsheets.
We really aren't.
We are deeply flawed, highly emotional, biological systems running on fluctuating hormones and neurotransmitters.
So true.
If you try to run your life like a perfectly optimized, emotionless, algorithmic model, you will eventually crash, and you will crash hard.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
This brings us to a brilliant and vital distinction made in the behavioral economics literature. The difference between striving to be rational and striving to be reasonable.
Yes, the rational versus reasonable framework. I love this because it actually accounts for the human operating system.
How do you see it playing out?
Think about it. Nobody makes their most significant, life-altering financial decisions in a sterile laboratory on a spreadsheet. They don't sit in a white room calculating optimal tax loss, harvesting yields, and compound interest curves to the 7th decimal point.
No, they make these decisions at the kitchen table.
Exactly. They make them at 10:00 p.m., surrounded by the chaos of their kids, mixing the raw math with their personal history, their childhood traumas around money, their pride, their ego, their insecurities.
And their unique worldview. A purely rational decision, like skipping the latte every single day and investing that $6 into an index fund, might be mathematically flawless.
But it ignores human nature.
It ignores the fact that we experience cognitive fatigue, that we desire comfort, that we need small, manageable joys to sustain our willpower over a 50-year lifespan.
So aiming to be strictly perfectly rational is actually a psychological setup for failure.
It really is.
It's like trying to hold your breath indefinitely. You can do it for a minute, you can do it for 2 minutes. But eventually, your biology takes over, the panic sets in, and you gasp desperately for air.
And in the financial sense, that gasp is disastrous.
Right. That gasp is a massive, catastrophic, impulsive purchase that derails years of progress. It's the guy who eats rice and beans for 3 years and then suddenly finances a boat he can't afford because he just couldn't take the deprivation anymore.
Exactly. The extreme restriction creates a psychological pressure cooker. It is far more sustainable and ultimately more profitable to aim for being reasonable.
How does a reasonable plan differ?
A reasonable plan inherently accounts for human emotion and fatigue. It acknowledges that you are going to want that coffee, that you are going to need to take a vacation to avoid burnout, that sometimes you just need a little dopamine hit to get through a Tuesday.
So it explicitly budgets for the desires category.
Yes. It builds a controlled release valve rather than trying to weld the pressure cooker shut.
This connects deeply to a fascinating psychological phenomenon that was in the notes. It's called the end of history illusion.
Oh, that's a big one.
It's this massive cognitive blind spot that almost every human being suffers from. If I ask you to look back at who you were 10 years ago, you are perfectly capable of acknowledging the growth.
Oh, sure. I was a completely different person.
Right. You'd say, wow, I dressed terribly, my tastes were different, my career goals have changed, my values have shifted. We acknowledge our past evolution easily.
But looking forward is different.
Yes. When we look forward into the future, we suffer from this bizarre neurological illusion that personal history has ended with us right now, in this exact moment.
It's a failure of emotional imagination.
Exactly. Our prefrontal cortex is simulating the future, but to conserve energy, it just takes our current emotional state and projects it forward in a perfectly straight line.
We assume that the person we are today is the finished, final product.
And that our current desires, our current risk tolerance, and our current goals will remain perfectly static for the next 40 years.
And that illusion is incredibly dangerous when it comes to long-term financial planning.
Why is that?
Because it's the exact cognitive bias that leads us into the trap of financial extremes. If you severely underestimate how much your personality and needs will change over the next decade, you're very likely to lock yourself into a rigid, extreme plan that will eventually suffocate the future version of you.
Oh, that makes total sense. Can we play out a scenario to see how this breaks down in real time?
Let's do it. Imagine a 25-year-old who reads a compelling blog post about extreme frugality and the FIRE movement.
Financial independence, retire early.
Right. They get highly motivated. They decide, I am going to save 80% of my income. I will own almost nothing. I will live in a tiny, uncomfortable apartment. I will never eat at a restaurant. I will never travel.
Just relentless hoarding.
Yes. Just relentlessly hoard capital so they can be entirely financially free by age 35. Mathematically, that is a highly rational plan.
If the sole goal of a human life is to maximize a numerical value in a brokerage account in the shortest time possible, sure, it works.
But is it reasonable?
Almost never. Because let's look at what actually happens. 5, maybe 7 years into this grueling Spartan existence, they are 32 years old.
And they wake up one morning and realize they utterly resent the life they've built.
Right. They have deprived themselves of every spontaneous joy. They've lost touch with friends because every social connection required spending a little money they refused to part with.
The psychological toll of constant self-denial is immense.
They experience this deep, profound regret for sacrificing their youth on the altar of a spreadsheet.
And how do they react to that burnout? It is almost never a gentle, measured course correction.
It is a violent pendulum swing. The pressure cooker explodes.
Exactly. They abandon the extreme frugal plan entirely, and in a fit of rebellious emotional compensation, they impulse buy a massive house they don't need.
Or they finance a depreciating luxury car.
They blow the very wealth they tortured themselves to build, simply because the original plan had zero flexibility.
It couldn't accommodate the fact that a 32-year-old desires different things than a 25-year-old.
And we see the exact same destructive pendulum swing on the other extreme, the hyperconsumer.
Right. The person who operates on the assumption that they will always have their current high income, always have their current high energy levels, and always be perfectly healthy.
The other side of the end of history illusion.
Yes. They buy everything they want today to maximize their current lifestyle, operating under the illusion that no future crisis will ever require a safety net
Until they hit a recession.
or medical emergency,
Okay.
and the whole house of cards collapses.
This is why the most astute behavioral economists advocate so strongly for building a margin of safety, or what we might call room for error.
How does that work in practice?
Your financial plan, and really your life plan in general, must allow you to sleep peacefully at night. It has to be structurally designed to absorb the inherent chaos of the universe.
Because bad luck is inevitable.
The inevitability of bad luck and the guaranteed changes in your own personality. If your plan requires you to execute perfectly for 30 years, never getting sick, never losing a job, never experiencing a bear market, it is a dangerously fragile plan.
It's exactly like engineering a bridge. A civil engineer doesn't design a suspension bridge to withstand exactly the maximum weight of the cars they expect to be on it during rush hour.
That would be insane.
They build it to withstand 5 or 10 times that maximum weight. Why? Because they know there will be unexpected 100-year storms.
There will be illegally heavy freight trucks.
Right. They know there will be material wear and tear over decades. They explicitly build massive room for error into the concrete and steel.
And a reasonable financial plan has those exact same shock absorbers.
It deliberately allows for the occasional impulsive treat or the unexpected life pivot without the entire structural integrity of the system collapsing.
And if we can find that reasonable middle ground, if we can avoid the wild pendulum swings of the extremes, we set the stage for the actual underlying physical mechanism that builds wealth over time.
I really want to dig into this mechanism because the great secret to accumulating wealth isn't having a genius-level IQ.
Not at all.
It's not having access to insider information, and it's certainly not picking the perfect crypto token at exactly the right second.
It is much more boring than that.
And infinitely more powerful. It is the underlying physics of wealth, repetition, survival, and the mathematics of compounding.
There is this powerful mathematical analogy in the notes regarding language learning that completely demystifies the abstract idea of compounding.
Yes, it makes it so beautifully concrete. Let's walk through it. Imagine you have 2 students who are trying to learn a complex new language.
Okay, 2 students.
The first student is your classic crammer. They wait until the end of the week, and they sit down and study for 10 brutal hours straight in a single exhausting day.
We all know that person.
Right. The second student takes a completely different, much more reasonable approach. They study for just 2 hours a day, but they do it consistently for 5 days in a row.
On the surface, the total input of effort looks identical, 10 hours versus 10 hours.
If human learning or wealth building was just a matter of simple addition, the results for both students would be exactly the same.
But it's not simple addition because of the neurological mechanisms of the brain. The author applies the logic of compound interest to this daily habit.
And here's the why behind it. When a second student studies for 2 hours and then goes to sleep, their brain performs synaptic pruning and memory consolidation.
They physically rest.
Yes. So when they wake up for day 2, that baseline of knowledge makes learning the next batch of information roughly 10% easier and more effective.
There is a compounding return on the daily consistency.
Exactly. If you map this out over a year using simple interest for the first student, the crammer, their sporadic bursts of effort generate a theoretical value of 520 hours of mastery.
But the second student,
The one doing 2 hours a day with that 10% neurological compounding effect. Over a year, their accumulated value isn't 520. It mathematically snowballs to 10,085 hours of value.
they achieve more than double the result despite investing the exact same total amount of time.
That is the ultimate, undeniable financial superpower, compounding.
And this is exactly why understanding the psychology of impulsive buying is so profoundly critical.
Because it disrupts the math.
Exactly. Every single time you succumb to that 2.0 AM urge and make an impulsive buy out of the desires category, you aren't just losing the initial $50 or $100.
That is the absolute smallest part of your loss.
The real tragedy, the invisible devastation, is that you are interrupting the compound interest.
You are resetting the clock.
You are digging up the tiny seed you just planted yesterday to see if it's growing yet, and in doing so, you kill the future tree.
It's the interruption that destroys the wealth, not the purchase price.
Success in investing or in building any kind of meaningful generational stability isn't about making the smartest, most aggressive trades. It's not about timing the top and bottom of the market perfectly.
What is it about, then?
It is almost entirely about constructing a life that ensures you are never forced to quit. It's the ability to adopt a strategy of survival so that you can just, as one of the sources incredibly bluntly puts it, shut up and wait.
Shut up and wait. It might be the best and hardest financial advice ever written.
Because it feels wrong.
Right. We are primates biased toward action. When the stock market dips violently, or when we feel bored on a Sunday afternoon, our brains scream at us to do something.
And you want to tinker.
We want to sell or buy or adjust. But surviving long enough for the sheer grinding math of compounding to work its magic is the entire game.
I was reading the Babylonian texts again, and this perfectly echoes their second law of gold.
Oh, what does that law state?
The law states that gold labors diligently and multiplies like flocks in the field for the wise owner who finds it profitable employment.
Like flocks in the field.
Yeah.
That is a brilliant agrarian way to explain compound interest to an ancient civilization.
Right. You don't have to stand out in the field and shout at the sheep to make them reproduce.
You don't have to actively micromanage them.
You just have to put them in a safe, enclosed pasture, protect them from wolves, and wait. Time does all the heavy lifting.
But every time you give in to an impulsive buy, every time you let the market spear penetrate your shield, you aren't just letting a wolf into the pasture.
What are you doing?
You are voluntarily slaughtering your own sheep for a quick snack, sacrificing the entire future flock.
Ouch. That is a brutal image, but it's true.
You just have to survive long enough for the math to work. But here's the rub. Surviving in a hyper-capitalist culture that bombards you with thousands of algorithmically targeted spears every single day requires more than just a dry mathematical understanding of compound interest.
Knowing the math of a 10% return isn't enough to stop the visceral emotional urge at 2.0 AM.
No, it absolutely is not. The math is the map, but it's not the terrain.
To truly stop impulsive buying at its deepest root, to render the marketer's spear completely ineffective, we need a paradigm shift.
A complete rewiring.
We need a completely new philosophical framework regarding what physical objects actually are and what we are actually exchanging when we spend our money.
And this is where we have to dive into the deeply philosophical, almost spiritual territory from the Korean source, Babylonian.
They present a perspective on consumer goods that honestly stopped me in my tracks.
It changes everything. Let's break it down. In the West, we tend to view the things we buy, a book, a cotton shirt, a leather bag, a new iPhone, as just dead, inert material.
Just stuff. Matter organized for our convenience.
But the author argues a radically different viewpoint. They argue that these objects are not dead.
What do you mean?
Every single physical object you purchase contains the life, the biological energy, the sweat, the irreplaceable time, and the tears of the human beings who made it.
The people who extracted the raw materials, who stood on the assembly line to manufacture it, and who drove the trucks to ship it.
Yes. There is a baseline of human life embedded in the DNA of every single thing we consume.
It's a heavy, sobering thought.
But an absolutely necessary one if we want to build that shield. When you buy something impulsively, let's say a fast fashion jacket, use it once for a quick dopamine hit at a party, and then banish it to the back of a closet or throw it into a landfill, you're essentially killing the inherent function of that object.
The author defines this behavior as a profound lack of economic sensitivity.
It's a form of casual disrespect, not just to your own depleted bank account, but to the inherent value of the item itself and the human labor trapped inside it.
True economic sensitivity, true respect for the material world, means taking responsibility for an object and utilizing it until its basic functional value is entirely exhausted.
It fundamentally changes how you look at your possessions. It makes you realize that being a hyper-consumer, constantly buying and discarding, isn't just financially draining.
It's a kind of arrogant, careless disregard for the monumental effort it takes to create and sustain the modern world.
When you hold an object and recognize the life inside it, the urge to just mindlessly accumulate more junk starts to feel hollow.
But let's take this philosophical shift even one step further, because this is where the absolute masterstroke lies.
Let's look at the ultimate what-if scenario presented in the psychology of money.
Yes, this is the thought experiment that can permanently rewire your brain's reward circuitry against impulsive spending.
The entire system relies on us viewing money in a very specific way.
What if you stopped viewing money as paper bills or as digital pixels on a screen that you simply exchange for physical goods?
What if you fundamentally started viewing money as stored autonomy?
Stored autonomy. I want to really unpack that because I believe that concept is the ultimate impenetrable shield against the marketers.
We are brainwashed to think that the greatest dividend money pays is the ability to buy luxury.
We think money is a tool used to acquire a fancier car, a larger house with unused rooms, or designer clothes with prominent logos.
But the deepest, most psychologically fulfilling, life-altering dividend that money pays is freedom.
It is the ability to wake up in the morning, look at the ceiling, and say, I have complete control over what I do today.
Exactly. Unspent money buys time. It buys options.
It buys the ability to look at a toxic, soul-crushing job or an abusive boss and step away without facing immediate financial ruin.
It buys the time to recover from a sudden illness without the compounding terror of eviction.
It buys the ability to spend a random Tuesday afternoon sitting on the living room floor building Legos with your kids instead of grinding through a 2-hour commute you hate.
When you successfully view money not as a coupon for a product, but as a certificate of future freedom, a $500 impulsive purchase of a jacket you don't need suddenly looks very, very different.
It completely flips the entire psychological script.
So let's go back to that 2.0 a.m. moment. The blue light is glowing. You are hovering your thumb over the Buy Now button for that $400 coffee grinder.
If you have made this philosophical shift, you aren't just swiping a credit card.
You are swiping a day of your future freedom.
You are literally, mathematically, trading a peaceful Tuesday with your family in 10 years for a piece of metal today.
You're trading the option to retire a month earlier or the option to take a lower-paying job you actually love for a gadget that will likely be technologically obsolete and sitting in a landfill in 36 months.
When you reframe the debate that way, when the inner war is raging between your manufactured desires and your rational needs, this is the weapon you use to fight back.
You aren't debating whether you want the coffee grinder. Of course you want it. The algorithm designed the want perfectly.
You are debating whether the coffee grinder is worth sacrificing a quantifiable piece of your future autonomy.
You are asking if this object is more valuable than your own sovereignty.
And almost universally, when the question is framed with that level of stakes, the urge to buy simply evaporates. The spell is broken.
It is incredibly empowering because suddenly the act of saving money isn't about deprivation anymore.
It's not about punishing yourself or being a miser or miserably eating beans and rice while everyone else has fun.
Saving becomes an act of radical, joyful self-preservation.
You are hoarding freedom. You are meticulously building an invisible fortress of options around yourself and your family.
And that profound realization ties us right back to the illusion of wealth we discussed earlier.
The neighbor driving the $100,000 sports car might look incredibly wealthy to the untrained eye.
But if they are chained to a high-stress 80-hour-a-week job they absolutely despise just to make the exorbitant lease payments, they have zero autonomy.
They are deeply structurally impoverished in the only metric that actually matters to human happiness: control over their own time.
Meanwhile, the person driving a reliable, slightly dented 10-year-old sedan who has quietly accumulated a year's worth of living expenses in the bank might look completely average to the outside world.
But they possess a level of invisible wealth, psychological peace, and sheer physical safety that the driver of the sports car can literally only dream of.
They are playing a completely different game. They have opted out of the game of acquiring stuff and mastered the game of acquiring time.
We have really journeyed through a massive amount of conceptual ground here today.
We started by recognizing the invisible, relentless 25-year war being waged against our minds by sophisticated algorithms trying to bypass our logic and hijack our feelings.
We explored the danger of mimicking the financial moves of people who are playing completely different games and how that mimicry traps us in the illusion of visible wealth.
We examined the profound grace of aiming to be reasonable over being strictly rational.
We acknowledge that we are flawed human beings whose goals and desires will inevitably change. And we highlighted exactly why we must build a margin of safety room for error into our lives to avoid the destructive pendulum swings of financial extremes.
We looked at the sheer, undeniable mathematical physics of compounding and why survival, rest, and the simple ability to shut up and wait is the true secret to multiplying wealth over a lifetime.
And finally, we completely redefine our relationship with the physical world itself, recognizing the human life and labor imbued in the objects we buy.
And shifting our core definition of money from a tool used to buy things to a tool used to buy autonomy.
It's a lot to process, but it fundamentally, irrevocably changes how you walk through a grocery store, how you look at an advertisement, or how you browse the internet late at night.
It does. It arms you for the battle. And as we bring this synthesis to a close, I want to leave you with a deep, quiet reflection.
I want you to think about the oldest, most worn-out object you own that you still genuinely love and use. Maybe it's a faded, perfectly broken-in t-shirt.
Or a battered ceramic coffee mug with a chipped handle, or a mechanical watch with a heavily scratched face.
Think about how much life you have extracted from that object. Think about how many memories it holds and how perfectly it serves its intended function without needing to be new or flashy or impressive to anyone else.
That's a really beautiful grounding image.
Now, I want you to take that feeling and apply it to your bank account. Don't look at that number as a high score in a video game that needs to be constantly maximized to impress neighbors who don't care about you.
Look at it as a vault of unspent time.
A pristine reservoir of future Tuesdays, of unbothered mornings, of choices you haven't made yet.
The very next time you feel the algorithmic urge to impulsively buy something, the next time you're sitting at that 2 a.m. crossroads, feeling the crushing pressure to prove your worth to a world that honestly isn't paying attention, take a breath, step back, and ask yourself this one question.
Am I buying this object to truly deeply enrich my life? Or am I accidentally selling a piece of my own future freedom to buy a cage I can't even see?
I invite you to just sit with that question tonight. Let it settle into your bones. We will catch you next time.